Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to announce my today's guest, Maria Volokh, mm, prominent Russian young politician, graduate from King's College London, Maastricht University, a qualified lawyer. Good afternoon, Maria. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Good afternoon, and thank you.
Maria, today I would like to talk with you about legal profession. In today's world, what we now see that we actually live in some kind of turmoil, and obviously the legal profession has to be reassessed. So what do you think? Is actually legal profession important if we're talking about sustainable development of the world economy, or world political system?
Yeah, there are many people who say that actually we don't need lawyers anymore because everything can be done by artificial intelligence. And I believe that it can be helpful in certain circumstances, but in most of the cases, we still need human intelligence to deal with certain scenarios. We definitely need human rights lawyers nowadays, especially in Russia and also worldwide. Yeah, I don't see any reasons why legal professions should not be relevant anymore.
Do you think that now universities overproduce lawyers? Because what we see now, there are huge number of universities which offer different types of law degrees, from BA degree to LLM degrees. So huge number of universities, they offer different type of degrees. Huge number of people pursue legal degrees each year, and now we have many lawyers who are seeking for a job. For them it's very hard to find a good position and receive sustainable salaries. So do you think that we are overproducing lawyers today?
It depends on the country, because for instance, in the EU and in the US, it's very difficult to get a law degree. It's first of all very difficult to get into the law school and then to actually get the degree. And it's not that popular as, for instance, in Russia, because many people just don't want to put so much time and effort into it. And it's really time and effort consuming. Whereas in Russia, yeah, I think my every second friend is a lawyer or holds a law degree. And there is this problem that none of them have a job or none of them work in the legal sphere. Me neither. I work as a journalist, but I'm writing on the legal matters. Actually, even though universities may overproduce lawyers, it's still not necessary for them to work to get the advocate's qualification and to work in the law firm or to become a barrister. There are many like intermediate sphere where you can perfectly use your law degree and still have a proper job and feel comfortable.
What matters more for the lawyer, what do you think, to obtain soft skills or hard skills? So I mean that nowadays we see that graduate who graduate from university with distinction, they do not perform well because they are lacking some soft skills which are really important when we're talking about let's say solving different legal matters, especially which deal with different governmental issues, etc., etc. So what do you think, what is more important for the lawyer, to have qualification, to have hard skills, specific skills, or to have soft skills, so to be a kind of fixer of legal matters?
Again, it depends on the country. But talking about the EU, definitely hard skills, because you need to know the law. to work with the law. It's the most important thing. If you don't know the law, if you don't know the theory, you cannot go further. Of course, it's super important to be a nice and friendly person, to be able to communicate with the clients, to attract the clients. But if you do not know the law, you will not get any further.
Nowadays, universities, especially in the European Union, they offer many degrees in the European Union law, in international law. What do you think? Is it really important to get a degree in international or European Union law, or it's better to study national law?
As a person who has two useless degrees in European law with Russian citizenship, I would definitely recommend to study national law. But in my case, I really love European and international law. So I'm not that interested in national law. So if you're like me, then okay, go study European or international law, but it's your responsibility what you're gonna do with it in the future. There are not so many spheres where you can use this degree, especially talking about international law. In Europe, you can still get into law firms in Brussels. You can work for the European institutes if you are a European citizen. But with international law, it's very, very difficult to get into the UN or into the international courts. And that's pretty much it, where you can apply it.
There is a famous book written by Stanford professor Cal Newport, to be so good that they can't ignore you. So what is your advice? How to be as good as other people won't be able to ignore you?
I don't know. What do you mean precisely?
For instance, I mean, when you're starting at law school and you have your peers and they are your competitors, let's say, and you want to be outstanding, you want to compete them, you want to take an upper hand, you want to be, let's say, you want to achieve better marks, you want to be in the spotlight, you want professors at law school to pay attention to you. So how to be an outstanding student at university? What do you think?
Okay, I think it's actually a pretty common problem in the law schools. At least I faced a lot of competition. I don't think it's so relevant for the other professions. Well, it's just you just need to study hard and do not think about this competition. Do not compare yourself to other. Do not put too much pressure on yourself. Just do what you need to do. Study as hard as you can. I don't know. I used to spend like sometimes 17 hours in the library for weeks, and that's how I got a distinction. I have a distinction for my bachelor's degree. And when you spend time on comparing yourself to others and on the, I don't know, getting upset, then it's not the right way.
When we're talking about European universities, we are basically talking about some culture which exists between, let's say, professors and students inside the classroom. And it differs from the culture which traditionally existed in, let's say, post-Soviet space. So how can you assess this culture, which, let's say, culture of communication which exists in European universities?
My professors were very easily approachable. You could go to their office anytime you want, ask any questions. You could ask questions after the tutorials, before the tutorials. In the meantime, I used to send like 10 emails a day to one of my European law professor because I was just like curious about certain things. Yeah, and also like the culture is very, I don't know, easy, because also my university used to organize certain networking or even drinking events where we could communicate with our professors or with the external visitors from EU institutions, for example. So yeah, like there is no pressure. You don't see your professor as your enemy. You see him as a friend, as a person who can and is willing to help you.
So maybe this was your key to success, just to spam your professor with 10, 15 emails, and finally, in order to get rid of you, he assessed you highest mark.
Maybe.
Maria, if we're talking about, let's say, the qualification of professors in post-Soviet space, we understand that unfortunately, after the collapse of Soviet Union, professors who teach at law school, who teach in different universities, not only on legal subject, they unfortunately, they usually, those people who can't find themselves on the market. So if you're talking about legal sphere, they can't perform as a lawyer frequently. So they don't have another option rather to go to university and to teach students, but they're lacking, let's say, practice. They only know theory. Comparing to European universities, when all professors or almost all professors who enters the classroom, usually they are practitioners. So how do you see we can change the situation? I mean, to boost let's say, to boost the level of education on the post-Soviet space, legal education post-Soviet space, not only legal education post-Soviet space, and how to attract practitioners, experienced lawyers to the classrooms, and to, let's say, improve the level of competitiveness of post-Soviet universities comparing to European universities?
That's a difficult question, and I think to answer it, you need to first find out what is the main problem with Russian education. So it's like the fact that universities cannot attract practitioners is like the consequences of the main problem. And the main problem is that there is definitely something very wrong with Russian education, the way of learning, the way of how the whole system operates. It's very corrupt. I used to study in Russia in high school, and also I have many friends who graduated from Russian universities, and none of them ever put any effort into their education. So they just come there, they sit in the lectures, they find 100 ways to cheat or to corrupt their professors, and they get the degree. Like they're not even interested in the subject matter. And this is something you need to change first. I don't know how, but you definitely need to change this. And when there will be some interest coming from the students, when the whole system will function on the right way, you can also attract professors, because they will be interested in passing on their knowledge to the students who need it. And also you need to offer them proper salary, because currently the salary for high school teachers and for academics is very, very low.
You're talking about bribes, you're talking about corruption. Is it possible to get rid of corruption overall, if you're talking about not simply investor, but society in general? Or it's not possible to carve out the whole corruption?
I think it is possible. We have some examples from former Soviet Union states which are currently in the EU, and the situation with corruption is way, way better than it could be. So I think it is possible. It's not, I don't believe that it's something like in our mentality or in our history. This is just the consequences of the system Putin built. There was no corruption in the USSR. I mean, like not that much. And I don't think that the methods of fighting with corruption were right, but at least there was no corruption. So it is possible to find a way to get rid of it.
Yeah, but I think that it's you know, part of the myth that there was no corruption in the Soviet Union. In Soviet Union, there are many myths that in Soviet Union many things didn't exist, which actually exist in life, as well as corruption. Corruption existed in Soviet Union as well. I think that the extent of corruption, and you're right, comparing to, for instance, today's Russia, it's something completely different. I mean, some members of the Communist Party in Soviet Union, they couldn't even dream about these palaces, which now in the possession of Putin's elite, for instance, if you're talking about, let's say, Russia. Maria, I would like to ask you last question, and it deals more with, let's say, the moral question. So what do you think, what has to be more important for the lawyer to, let's say, to try to achieve some human goals, or at the end of the day, lawyer had to think about money, to think about his remunerations. So what really matters more for the lawyer? Some moral things, or remuneration which he finally gets upon the completion of successful case?
I don't think there is such a dilemma, because like many people think that, for instance, lawyers who work with criminals like murderers or I don't know, Russian oligarchs and really horrible people, they have no moral values because they defend them. But it's not a matter of like defending these people for money. It's a matter of them having their procedural rights and human rights. So you do not try to justify what they have done. You just make sure that their rights, procedural rights, are not violated. So it's not a matter of like money versus human values. It's about human values in general.
Really last question, which I would like to ask you about, let's say, the culture of education in Europe. When you study, you usually mix with different people from different corners of the world, from different nationalities, etc. Is it really important for a student to get such type of experience by communicating with people from different corners of the world? Is it important really for the lawyer, especially in the field of international law?
I think it is important for people in general, because when you talk to different people, when you know different nationalities, you're not that you don't have these stereotypes which are common in your state, and you can just make your own conclusions. It develops some critical thinking. And it's just important at all, especially if you work in the field involving international relationships or international law. Yeah.
Maria, thank you very much for this interview. I also appreciate the opportunity to take an interview from you. So today's was our special guest, Maria Volokh, who graduated from King's College London, from Oxford University, who is now a journalist, a young politician. Thank you very much, Maria, for this interview.